Perspective is one of the navigating tools of anyone, and that includes contemporary shamanism. Within any moment, we have the choice, one of the more important choices, about whether or not to focus more on our mind or our emotions, whether to pay more attention to body cues or to intuition. And this choice, moving towards integration, moving towards well-being, the ultimate shamanic goal, to create balance, to create healing, to create well-being, is itself somewhat of an intuitive or resonance-driven choice. And even within the mental domain of thoughts and values and ideas and paradigms, every paradigm, every thought has its own logic, its own integrity, and can, if honored, lead us to its destination. But of course, the question is not whether or not the thought that efficiency is good, and the question, what is the most efficient way to do this, these questions are not ultimately as important as the question, will the algorithm of efficiency itself take me closer to well-being or further away? Now, this becomes very important when we open up into the vastness of the mental ecosphere. We are a culture in which the mind predominates, and as a result, it is a question what to do with such a culture, with thoughts. You'll forgive me as the mango sticky rice arrives, and so if we can look at our mental world as a forest, an ecology of ideas, the question is not whether or not a given thought or a belief is true or has integrity with itself. Many things are self-referencing, including Christianity. Most fundamentalist Christians have within the paradigm of Christianity a reason why everything happened the way it is, and even a reason why it doesn't look like Even a reason that some aspects of Christianity don't look logical is logical when you can create things like a testing and punishing archaic figure. It has integrity. The question is not, does it have integrity? The question is, does it bring well-being? One, in this moment, and two, on a consistent basis. Now, another way of putting this is to look at reality as a probability field. Now, it's the goal and responsibility of every individual to take a probability field, such as in much of Western culture, 1 in 4 people will have a major psychological crisis and mental emotional disease in their lifetime. So that is a 25% probability field of mental emotional disease. Now, the job of the culture, of government, of group culture, of corporation, of our individual voting, is to choose a probability field that favors the individuals within it to win in some form of success and well-being as a probability field. It's then the job of the individual to choose to play in arenas that have high probability fields, 1. And 2, to make the individual choices, to use one's personal freedom to land on the right side of the dividing line. Because what a probability field is you have 100%, and a probability divides a line, and it says within 1,000 people there's going to be 3 people that commit suicide. There's going to be 10 people that get this kind of cancer. There's going to be another 15 that get this kind of cancer. There's going to be 100 that are obese. There's going to be 50 that are depressed. So this is the statistics, the probability field. And it creates a whole variety of lines within the 100%, which determines how many people in 1,000 are going to end up on which side of the line. So this is the social and the political game, is to, in a healthy sense, create a very tiny area where people are dying and getting sick and miserable, and a very large area where people are growing and happy and healthy. Now, that's the game board. Once the game board is set in place, which for each of us around us it is, then our individual responsibility is to make the personal choices that, to the best of our ability, put us in the box that is closest to well-being. So if there's 100% and there's a 3%, which is 3 people, 3 people are going to get depressed or whatever it is. The responsibility of the individual is to understand that there's a 3% chance of getting depressed, there's an X% chance of dying on a motorcycle, and to move themselves, first of all, out of probability fields that have a majority probability that they will die or get sick or lose all their money and be unhappy. So in a casino probability field, it only has to be 55% probable that a casino will win, or the house will win, and 45% probable that you will win, or and it's now 55% probable that you will lose. Now, if you are stuck in such an environment, let's say it's the economy, and the probability field that you're dealing with is that there's a 50% chance that you're going to go bankrupt. Let's say there's a 60% chance. In the restaurant field, I believe the statistic is 90% failure rate within 3 years. In other words, 9 out of 10 of all restaurants begun in the United States are closed within 3 years, which is typically not just a death in money. This can mean death in relationship, meaning the shame and the stigma of shame, the failure and the stigma of failure, the pain and the discomfort of our culture dealing with pain, the humiliation, the sensitivity of going through a failed dream, a failed restaurant startup, also has a correlating aspect of relationships and friendships that ended. That could be a mixture of investment money lost and embarrassment, because if you feel shame and embarrassed around a certain aspect of our life, if we feel shamed and embarrassed about a certain aspect of our lives, then anyone who is most intimate with us in that area of our lives becomes a reminder of that shame. And so it's one of the reasons why many married couples who have a child die will divorce and separate, because both people in the couple are reminded of the guilt that they feel for not having done more. And that is so unsexy and painful and toxic that they need to get rid of the person to escape their own feeling. So these are each probability fields. Now, there's three responses to a probability field. One, change the odds so that they're in your favor. Number two is leave the probability field, i.e., you're a steel worker in the United States, and there's an 85% probability field that you're going to be laid off, over the next 10 years. In 10 years, you're going to be too old to retrain within the current, But you can go and get a visa to live in another country and be a steel worker, or you can start retraining now. So, number one, you need to understand the probability field that you're dealing with. Number two, when you understand it, number one, you can change the odds. Number two, you can leave the probability field, leave the industry. In the case of watching the news, because ratings are higher with bad news than good news, and they're particularly high with disaster, news media, when analyzed, expresses 17 negative things for every positive thing. And secondly, it exaggerates it. So there is a high statistical probability that your adrenals, etc., will go up listening to the news. So leaving would be, I'm no longer going to give an hour a day of my attention to an adrenaline creating media system that has an 80% probability field of getting me upset and a 2% probability field that something good will come as a result of me being upset. In other words, when I analyzed how many people I had loved and helped, including myself, as a result of listening to the news, the answer was no one. I've never loved or helped or felt uplifted or been able to love, and the news is not worth an hour of my time by those metrics. And so when you look at the probability field and you realize you cannot change what's put on the news, it's easy. You turn the channel. You listen to a book on tape, and that's exactly what I've done. In the books on tape that I've listened to 1 to 3 hours a day, there is an 80% chance that I will learn something useful, and many of them, considering that I've spent $5,000 on books on tape through the Audible app, many of them have generated more money significantly than the cost of the whole library. In other words, that library of 500 books and listening to them has made me roughly $200,000 and counting. So knowing that I'm in that probability field where if I listen to the news an hour a day, I have a less than 2% chance of doing anyone any good with it, and I have an 80% chance of being more upset, and I can do one thing or the other because we all just have the same 24 hours of the day. If I pivot to listening to an Audible book, on something that means something to me or that can help my business to grow, I'm betting with the odds in my favor. The final thing that we can do when we cannot leave or change the probability is we can work like hell to understand what we can personally do to bring ourselves into that minority of winners. So let's say that within a group of 100 people, in the environment around us, there are 3 millionaires, and we desperately want to be one of those millionaires. Why? Who knows, but whatever. If there are 3 millionaires produced within a group of 100 people in the given environment, and we want to be one of the 3, then we can know that we are in confrontation with the probability field, and we will have to exert and expend energy more than 97% of the rest of the population in some way to end up in that field. That's assuming, and that's within the limitations of struggle and effort. Who's struggling the most, who's learning the most, who's working the hardest, etc. In that paradigm, if you can do it in another way that succeeds, great. But one way or another, within that probability field, there will be 97 people who don't become a millionaire within the next year or whatever. And there'll be 3 that do. And the question is, can you become one of those 3? And what will take you there? But what I want to talk about is much more important than, because you can say, oh, I want to be one of those millionaires. That's a cultural story. And then you can say, I want to study those millionaires. And you can read things like The Millionaire Mind or The Millionaire Next Door, and you can learn all the habits of millionaires. And then you can start doing those habits and then doing them better than the 97 people closest to you. And then there's a reasonable chance, if you do all that within X number of years, you too can be a millionaire. It's not that hard, particularly with time. If you've got 10 or 20 years, there's a lot of different ways to do it, if it's important. But the really important question becomes what is bringing us into integrity with ourselves? Where's the joy? Where is the presence? How do we become more of who we are, and what parts of us do we want to grow? Can we start to feel more power, more joy, more enthusiasm? And what are the things that, if that's how we identify our core self, what are the things and what are the perspectives that lead us there? Particularly when we have freedom. For example, in this moment, I could be in the United States making $1,000 to $2,000 in net profit every day. In this moment, I could be meditating in my crystal garden in the United States. In this moment, I could be meditating in my hotel. In this moment, I could be swimming, I could be kite surfing, I could be making love. And yet, I'm choosing to create this video. The question is that bringing me into alignment with the resonance, with the state of being that I want to be? And in this moment, the answer is yes. And in this moment, the cycle of ending up here was as simple as saying, wait a minute, I can do anything, where's the joy? Why not? Why not follow the joy? And the answer was as simple as turning left at that moment and ending up at a new restaurant by the ocean. Was as simple as ordering whatever. In this case, I have a headache, a neck ache, from unresolved bits of code. And I want you to understand that it's a little bit tough for our conscious minds to resolve all these tensions. In other words, we say being efficient is good, and we see lots of pleasure as a result of efficiently making money or whatever. Or we say being kind is good, being efficient is good, being silent and being more present and listening more is good, teaching is good, going and doing stuff and being productive is good, making money is good, giving money away is good. And what's the conscious mind to do with this? And this is partly what I'm talking about, is in a complex reality in which there's duality and paradox and time and space, all of these things are good. They all need each other, meaning I'm exploring thoughts in this world and have no expectation of making a penny from this video. And yet, so you could say that it's inefficient, and yet this moment is resting on 25 years of being efficient in different ways with my business. So this inefficiency is relying on efficiency. And efficiency relies on inefficiency. Things like sleeping, which are, to the surface, you're just laying there. And yet to be really efficient, we have to lay there in a really excellent way for about 6 to 9 hours. And then we're efficient, and so these paradoxes and stuff resolve. And the real question as we create freedom for one another is, how do we resolve them? What do we do moment to moment? Including, when do we follow a plan? And when do we wing it? And when do we change the plan? And on what basis? And on what, and with what metrics? What metrics of algorithms do we use to analyze whether our change or our plan is a success or is a failure or is a mediocrity of some kind in between? What metrics do we use? And what I suggest is that the awareness be kind of this kind of like warmer, cooler phenomena. You're getting warmer, you're getting colder when you're looking, hunting for something. You're blindfolded. Oh, we're all blindfolded. our cultural thoughts cannot possibly equip us for the complex sophistication of a multidimensional reality that we're backing into ass backwards. We're just we're just on the very edge of what's possible. So we're in a warmer, colder, and what's the warmer, colder? I think it's that sense of purpose, of self, of presence, of something bigger, of something integrating that's much bigger than us with our very limited selves. And the joy of being present for that in action, in goals, in visions and possibilities. And so as I feel into that in this moment, there's this project that I'm doing with my assistant to help TED Talk speakers activate their talk by inviting the audience to actually do something. And within that blindfolded mind that we all have, and within my own blindfold, that's the best that I can see. And so just talking it through, asking the questions, has led me back to that. So that's what I've learned. That's what I take away. As well as those moments. There have been 3 to 5 minutes of moments in which this very big energy converged, and I felt much bigger than I was the moment before. And I felt much more centered and grounded, and I felt many more resources available. And because I've stumbled into that and chosen that as a result of following these flows and of this video is the most productive use of my time, despite the fact that neither this nor the project to support TED speakers will make any money, will save any time, will make me look cooler or get me any things. And yet, that experience of coming into alignment, which means that our conscious mind and our illusion in this world is getting closer to hidden parts of who we are. There's a way that somehow, going into this direction, I've touched a deep vein that I cannot see with my conscious mind. And as a result of touching that, I have more resources, I'm more integrated with myself. And that is a healing of sorts. Healing to separate the finger that has been severed, to reunite it with the whole. The consciousness that has been severed, to help it find its way back to the majesty and the grace of our consciousness, of who we are that is bigger than we know, but that we can feel in these moments when we come alive, in these moments of beauty and thank you for bearing with the ambient chaos, with the various distractions, and thank you for the quality of your presence and attention with me on this journey.